His billionaire boss invited her maid to a gala as a joke. She walked in wearing an expensive dress. A moment that transformed everything. The ballroom fell silent the moment Clara Bennett stepped through the golden doors. Crystal chandeliers reflected against marble floors. Champagne glasses froze halfway to people's lips. Whispers spread across the room like wildfire. Because standing at the entrance wasn't a socialite. Not a celebrity. Not a billionaire heiress. It was the maid. The same quiet housemaid wealthy guests barely noticed for 3 years. But tonight, she wore a breathtaking midnight blue gown that looked like it belonged on a royal red carpet. Her posture was elegant. Her confidence calm. And hanging around her neck was a necklace nobody expected her to own. Across the ballroom, Billionaire CEO Damien Whitmore slowly lowered his glass in complete shock. Because only hours earlier, he invited her to the gala as a joke after overhearing his rich friends mock her dreams. But what he discovered next changed everything. The maid they laughed at wasn't pretending to belong among the wealthy. In reality, she had once belonged to a world far richer than any of them could imagine. And before this night ended, the truth about Clara Bennett would leave the entire city speechless. Every morning at exactly 4:45 a.m., Clara Bennett woke before the rest of the city. Not because she wanted to. Because survival demanded it. Her tiny apartment sat above a noisy laundromat near the edge of downtown. The pipes rattled constantly. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained. And during winter, cold air slipped through cracks in the windows no matter how many towels she stuffed against them. But Clara never complained. She simply rose quietly each morning, tied her dark curls into a neat bun, and began another exhausting day. At 28 years old, Clara worked 3 jobs. Housemaid during the day. Waitress at night. Freelance seamstress whenever she found extra hours. Most people who crossed paths with her barely remembered her face. But everyone remembered her kindness. At the cafe near Whitmore Tower, she secretly paid for an elderly man's breakfast every Tuesday because his pension checks arrived late. At the laundromat downstairs, she repaired torn school uniforms for single mothers without charging them. And every Friday night, she left small care packages beside benches where homeless people slept. To Clara, kindness wasn't something you performed for attention. It was simply who you became after surviving pain yourself. Yet nobody knew much about her past. Not even the staff inside Whitmore Manor, the enormous estate where she worked as a maid. The mansion itself looked like something from a movie. 3 stories tall. Glass walls. Private gardens. Imported Italian marble floors. Everything polished. Everything perfect. Everything cold. Especially its owner. Damien Whitmore. At 39 years old, Damien was one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His technology company dominated headlines. Magazines called him brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. Employees called him something else behind closed doors. Emotionally distant. Damien rarely smiled. Rarely attended family gatherings. Rarely noticed the people cleaning around him. His life followed strict routines. Meetings. Contracts. Galas. Private flights. Repeat. After losing both parents in a tragic accident years earlier, Damien buried himself completely in work. Success became his shield against grief. And slowly, over time, he stopped seeing people clearly. Especially poor people. To him, struggling individuals represented weakness. Excuses. Bad decisions. At least that's what he told himself. Until Clara entered his life. The first time Damien truly noticed her happened on a stormy Thursday evening. Most staff had already left the mansion after preparing for an important charity gala Damien planned to host the following week. Clara remained behind finishing laundry in the lower level of the estate. Outside, thunder rattled the massive windows. Then suddenly, the power went out. The mansion fell into darkness instantly. Damien cursed under his breath upstairs while searching for his phone flashlight. But before he could call anyone, soft candlelight appeared near the staircase. Clara. She moved calmly through the dark hallway, lighting candles one by one. "You should have gone home hours ago," Damien said sharply. Clara offered a small polite smile. "Mrs. Holloway's medication was delivered late. I stayed to organize it for tomorrow." Mrs. Holloway was Damien's elderly housekeeper who recently became ill. Damien frowned slightly. "That's not your responsibility." "Maybe not officially." Then, without another word, Clara continued lighting candles throughout the mansion. Damien watched silently. Something about her unsettled him. Not because she spoke too much. Because she didn't. Unlike most people around wealth, Clara never tried impressing him. Never flirted. Never begged for attention. She simply worked quietly with a strange kind of dignity he couldn't explain. Over the following weeks, Damien noticed more things. One afternoon he overheard kitchen staff arguing over missing money collected for a sick janitor's surgery. Before tensions escalated, Clara quietly placed an envelope on the counter. "What's this?" someone asked. "Enough to cover the rest." The chef looked shocked. "That's nearly your entire paycheck." Clara shrugged gently. "He needs it more right now." Damien stood unnoticed outside the kitchen doorway, listening silently. Why would someone struggling financially give away so much money? The behavior made no sense to him. Another evening, he found Clara sewing a torn suit jacket belonging to one of his executives. "You know that can be replaced," Damien said. Clara continued stitching carefully. "Some things are worth fixing." The sentence lingered strangely in his mind afterward. Because somehow, it felt like she wasn't talking about the jacket. Still, despite growing curiosity, Damien kept emotional distance. Until the night everything changed. It happened during preparations for the Whitmore Winter Gala, the most elite social event of the year. Politicians. Celebrities. Business moguls. Everyone important would attend. Inside the ballroom, wealthy guests gathered early for private cocktails while staff rushed around finalizing decorations. Clara moved quietly between tables adjusting centerpieces. That's when she overheard them laughing. A group of wealthy investors stood near Damien discussing ordinary people. One woman scoffed dramatically. "These service workers always look so miserable." Another laughed. "Honestly, half of them probably dream about living like us." Then one man pointed casually toward Clara. "I wonder what she'd do if someone invited her to the gala." The group chuckled. "She'd probably faint before dessert," someone joked. Damien smirked faintly at first. But then he noticed something unexpected. Clara wasn't embarrassed. Wasn't angry. Instead, she calmly straightened a flower arrangement before quietly saying, "Actually, I think everyone deserves to experience beauty at least once." The room went awkwardly silent. Her answer carried no bitterness. Only honesty. One investor laughed mockingly. "Well then, maybe Damien should invite you." More laughter followed. And before thinking carefully, Damien replied casually, "Fine. Come tomorrow night." Everyone burst into amused applause. The invitation was clearly meant as entertainment. A joke. Even Clara understood that immediately. For a brief second, hurt flickered across her eyes. But she quickly hid it. Then she nodded politely. "Thank you for the invitation, sir." After she walked away, one investor laughed loudly. "There's no way she actually shows up." Damien forced a smile. But strangely, guilt settled in his chest. Because deep down, he knew he'd just humiliated someone kind for the amusement of cruel people. Later that night, while leaving the mansion, Clara passed Mrs. Holloway's room and noticed the elderly woman coughing violently. Without hesitation, Clara stayed another 2 hours caring for her. Preparing tea. Organizing medication. Reading softly until the older woman finally slept peacefully. Mrs. Holloway squeezed her hand weakly. "You have one of the rarest hearts I've ever known, child." Clara smiled sadly. Kindness doesn't cost anything. But after leaving the room, her expression changed. Because alone in the hallway, she quietly opened the invitation card Damien's assistant had handed her earlier. The elegant gold lettering shimmered beneath the chandelier lights. For a long moment, Clara simply stared at it. Then softly whispered something nobody else heard. "I never wanted this life back." And suddenly, for the first time, it became clear. Clara Bennett was hiding far more than poverty. She was hiding an entire past. One powerful enough to change everything. Before we continue with this incredible journey, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. Part 2, The Encounter and First Connection. The morning after the invitation, Clara Bennett tried convincing herself she wouldn't go to the gala. That would be the smart choice. The safe choice. She stood inside her tiny apartment staring at the elegant gold invitation card resting on the table beside her sewing machine. Outside, rain tapped softly against the narrow window. The laundromat machines downstairs rumbled constantly beneath the floorboards. Everything about her life felt small compared to the glittering world waiting at Whitmore Manor. And honestly, that was exactly how she preferred it. For years, Clara had worked hard to disappear. To become ordinary. Invisible. Safe. Returning to high society, even for one night, threatened everything she buried. A knock suddenly interrupted her thoughts. It was Mrs. Alvarez from downstairs holding a basket of folded laundry. "You've been awake all night again, haven't you?" the older woman asked gently. Clara smiled faintly. "I had sewing orders." Mrs. Alvarez noticed the invitation immediately. Her eyes widened. "Well, that looks expensive." Clara quickly flipped it over. "It's nothing." But older women who survive difficult lives become experts at recognizing hidden pain. Mrs. Alvarez studied her carefully. "That invitation isn't upsetting you because of where it's asking you to go," she said softly. Clara froze slightly. "You're afraid of who you'll become if you go back." The words landed too accurately. Clara lowered her eyes. "Some doors should stay closed." Mrs. Alvarez sat beside her quietly. "Maybe," she said gently. "But sometimes healing waits behind the doors we avoid most." Clara didn't answer. Because deep down, part of her knew this night might change everything. She just didn't know whether that terrified or exhausted her more. Meanwhile, across town inside Whitmore Tower, Damien Whitmore sat distracted during a board meeting. Numbers filled giant presentation screens. Executives discussed expansion strategies. But Damien barely listened. His thoughts kept returning to Clara. More specifically, the look in her eyes after he invited her. Not anger. Not embarrassment. Disappointment. As if she expected better from him. And strangely, that bothered him more than criticism ever had. Finally, one executive paused mid-presentation. "Damien?" He blinked. "What?" "You've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. The room chuckled awkwardly. Damien immediately stood. "Continue without me." He left the conference room irritated, mostly with himself. Why was a maid occupying this much space in his mind? He walked through the company lobby toward the parking garage when he noticed commotion near the entrance. A delivery driver argued loudly with security. "Please," the driver pleaded, "I just need 10 more minutes." My daughter's medicine is in the car and the pharmacy closes soon. The security guard remained unmoved. Rules are rules. Most people passed without stopping. Except Clara. She had arrived early to deliver clean table linens for the gala. Without hesitation, she quietly approached the driver. "How much is the medicine?" The man looked embarrassed. $90. Clara immediately opened her purse. Damien watched from a distance silently. She counted carefully. 20. 40. 60. Nearly all the cash she had. The driver's eyes filled with emotion. "No, miss, I can't take that." "You can," Clara replied softly. "Children shouldn't suffer because adults are having difficult days." Damien stared at her in disbelief. Again. Always again. This woman barely survived financially herself. Yet constantly gave away what little she had. Why? What kind of person keeps choosing kindness when life gives them so little in return? Before he realized it, Damien stepped forward. "I'll cover the rest." Everyone turned toward him. The driver looked shocked. "Sir, thank you." Damien handed security his card coldly. "Let him through." The driver nearly cried with gratitude before rushing away. Clara looked genuinely surprised. "That was kind of you." Damien almost laughed bitterly. Kind. Nobody used that word for him. "Don't sound so shocked," he replied. Clara tilted her head slightly. "I'm not shocked." "Then what?" "I think people sometimes forget who they are when they spend too much time around power." Her calm honesty stunned him again. Most people feared speaking openly to billionaires. Clara never seemed to. And somehow, she always managed to say things that cut directly through his carefully built emotional walls. That evening, preparations for the gala intensified across Whitmore Manor. Designers arrived. Florists filled the ballroom with imported roses. Luxury brands delivered jewelry collections for wealthy guests. Everything screamed elegance. Yet despite all the glamour surrounding him, Damien found himself distracted by one simple question. Would Clara actually come? By 7 p.m., the ballroom overflowed with elite guests. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Classical music floated softly through the air. Women wore designer gowns worth more than some people's yearly salaries. And nearly everyone quietly anticipated the evening's entertainment. Seeing whether the maid would embarrass herself. Several investors laughed openly near the champagne bar. She probably realized she doesn't belong here. "I told you she wouldn't come." Damien forced a smile while adjusting his cufflinks. But strangely, disappointment settled inside him too. Part of him wanted her to appear. Not for humiliation. For reasons he himself didn't fully understand. Then suddenly, the ballroom doors opened. Silence spread instantly. Every conversation stopped. And Clara stepped inside. The effect was immediate. Stunning. She wore a midnight blue gown that flowed elegantly like liquid silk beneath the chandelier lights. Tiny crystals shimmered subtly along the fabric like stars against a night sky. But it wasn't the dress alone that captured attention. It was her presence. Graceful. Calm. Refined. Like someone entirely familiar with rooms like this. Damien stared speechlessly. Because somehow, she didn't look like a maid pretending to fit in. She looked like she belonged more naturally than half the people attending. Whispers spread quickly. Who styled her? Wait, is that real sapphire? She looks incredible. One investor nearly choked on his drink. That's impossible. Clara walked calmly through the ballroom despite hundreds of eyes watching her. But inside, her heart pounded violently. This world brought memories she spent years trying to escape. Painful memories. Lonely memories. And as orchestral music echoed around her, flashes from another life returned unexpectedly. Grand staircases. Private schools. Formal dinners. A father laughing beside her. Then. Darkness. Loss. Fire. Debt. Ruined headlines. She pushed the memories away quickly. Not tonight. Damien slowly approached her. For once in his life, words failed him. You came. Clara offered a faint smile. You invited me. He looked at the necklace resting against her collarbone. An antique sapphire piece clearly worth a fortune. Where did you get that? Clara's expression softened almost sadly. It belonged to my mother. Something about the way she said it made Damien pause. Then suddenly, an elderly woman across the ballroom gasped loudly. A wealthy socialite named Victoria Sinclair stared at Clara in disbelief. No. People turned toward her. Victoria slowly walked closer, eyes wide with shock. It can't be. Clara froze. For the first time all night, genuine fear crossed her face. Victoria's voice trembled. You're Clara Bennett. The ballroom fell silent again. Not because people recognized the name, but because of Victoria's reaction. You disappeared after your father's company collapsed, she whispered emotionally. Everyone thought you left the country. Damien looked between them in confusion. What is she talking about? Victoria stared at him in disbelief. You mean you don't know? The room became painfully quiet. Then Victoria spoke the sentence that changed everything. Clara Bennett was once heir to one of the wealthiest families in this city. Gasps spread instantly across the ballroom. Damien's face went completely still. He turned slowly toward Clara. But she lowered her eyes quietly. Not proud. Not dramatic. Just tired. As if she'd spent years carrying a story too heavy to explain. One investor laughed nervously. That's impossible. Victoria shook her head firmly. No. I knew her parents personally. Suddenly, pieces began connecting inside Damien's mind. Her elegance. Her education. The way she carried herself. The way she spoke. Even her silence. This woman had never been ordinary. And yet, despite losing everything, she chose kindness instead of bitterness. That realization hit Damien harder than expected. Because he suddenly understood something deeply uncomfortable. The people in that ballroom with endless wealth often lacked compassion. But the woman who lost everything still gave away her last dollars to strangers. Clara quietly looked toward Damien. I didn't come here to deceive anyone. You worked as a maid, he said softly, still stunned. Yes. Why? Her answer came gently. Because after my father died and our family lost everything, I needed honest work. No shame. No self-pity. Just truth. Damien stared at her silently. Then, for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar rising inside him. Respect. Real respect. And somehow, that frightened him more than anything else. After the gala, nothing inside Damien Whitmore's world felt the same anymore. For years, he believed wealth revealed a person's value. Success. Status. Power. But now, every time he walked through the marble halls of Whitmore Manor, one uncomfortable truth followed him everywhere. The kindest person in his entire household had been the woman cleaning it. And somehow, that realization unsettled him deeply. Meanwhile, across the city, Clara Bennett desperately tried returning to normal life. But normal no longer existed. By sunrise, clips from the gala had already spread online. The maid who shocked high society. Billionaire's housemaid revealed as fallen heiress. Who is Clara Bennett? Social media exploded with speculation. Some praised her elegance. Others mocked her fall from wealth. News outlets dug through old archives, reposting painful headlines from years earlier. Bennett financial collapses overnight. Investor suicides linked to scandal. Bennett family disappears from public life. Clara sat silently inside her apartment staring at the glowing phone screen. Her hands trembled slightly. Because buried beneath those headlines lived memories she spent years trying to survive. The scandal destroyed everything. Her father died from a heart attack weeks after losing the company. Her mother became severely ill afterward. Friends vanished. Assets disappeared. And people who once praised the Bennett family suddenly treated them like contamination. At 20 years old, Clara watched their entire world collapse in less than 6 months. She never forgot the feeling of wealthy people turning away once money disappeared. That was why she chose a quiet life afterward. Not out of shame. Out of exhaustion. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Alvarez entered carrying tea. "You haven't slept." Clara forced a small smile. "I'm okay." "No, sweetheart," the older woman said gently. "You're surviving. That's different." Those words nearly broke her composure. Because survival was all Clara had done for years. Survive grief. Survive poverty. Survive loneliness. And somehow still remain kind through all of it. Meanwhile, Damien couldn't stop thinking about her. Especially one question. Why would someone raised in privilege choose humility instead of resentment after losing everything? Most people in her position would have become bitter. Cruel. Embarrassed. But Clara became compassionate instead. That difference fascinated him. 3 days later, Damien made an unusual decision. He visited the cafe where Clara worked evening shifts. The small diner buzzed with ordinary life, tired workers, students studying, families sharing cheap meals. Damien looked painfully out of place in his tailored coat and luxury watch. The entire cafe noticed immediately. So did Clara. She blinked in surprise while carrying coffee refills. "Mr. Whitmore." Damien suddenly felt strangely awkward. "I wanted to talk." Several customers immediately pulled out phones discreetly. Clara noticed. So did half the internet apparently. A faint smile almost appeared on Damien's face. "Can we sit somewhere quieter?" A few minutes later, they sat in the empty back storage room beside stacks of canned supplies. For the first time, Damien saw Clara outside the mansion environment. No glamorous gown. No chandeliers. Just tired eyes and rolled-up sleeves after a long shift. And somehow, she still carried herself with dignity. "I owe you an apology," Damien said finally. Clara looked surprised. "For what?" "The invitation." Understanding flickered across her face immediately. "You invited me as a joke." The directness stung. "Yes. But you regret it now." "I regret humiliating someone who didn't deserve it." Clara studied him quietly. Most wealthy men never apologized sincerely. Especially not billionaires. Finally, she spoke softly. "People reveal themselves when they think someone beneath them can't fight back." Damien lowered his eyes briefly. "And what did I reveal?" Clara answered honestly. "That you were lonely." The words hit him harder than expected. Not arrogant. Not cruel. Lonely. Because somehow, she saw straight through the armor he spent years building. Damien leaned back slowly. "You lost everything," he said carefully. "How are you not angry at the world?" Clara became quiet. Then finally answered. "Oh, I was." There was pain in her voice now. Real pain. "For a long time, I hated everyone who abandoned us after the scandal." Damien listened silently. "I kept thinking kindness was weakness because nobody showed us any when things fell apart." She glanced down at her hands. But then one day, when my mother got sick, a stranger paid for her medication. Damien frowned slightly. A stranger? Clara nodded. A woman working double shifts at a grocery store. She smiled faintly. She barely had enough money herself. What happened? She told me something I never forgot. Clara looked up at him softly. Pain can turn people cruel, or compassionate. You decide which one. The room became silent. Because Damien suddenly realized something deeply uncomfortable. His own pain had turned him cold. Her pain turned her kind. That contrast stayed with him long after he left the cafe. Over the next several weeks, their relationship slowly changed. Not romantically at first. Humanly. Damien began noticing people more. Really noticing them. He learned the janitor's son needed surgery. That kitchen staff worked unpaid overtime during holidays. That Mrs. Holloway skipped medication sometimes because she didn't want to cost too much. Things he once overlooked now felt impossible to ignore. And strangely, Clara became the quiet force behind that transformation. One afternoon, Damien discovered her secretly repairing coats donated to a homeless shelter. You do this on your day off? He asked. Clara shrugged gently. People are cold. You can't save everyone. No, she agreed softly. But helping one person still matters to that one person. Again. Always again. Simple words somehow exposing truths he spent years avoiding. But not everyone appreciated the growing closeness between them. Especially Damien's social circle. At a private dinner party, investors openly mocked him. So now billionaires are taking life advice from maids. Laughter spread around the table. Damien's jaw tightened. One woman smirked. She fooled everyone with that tragic backstory. Another added cruelly. People like her always want something eventually. For the first time in years, Damien felt genuine anger rising. You know nothing about her. The table went silent. His friend Ethan laughed awkwardly. Relax. We're joking. No, Damien said coldly. You're revealing your character. That conversation spread quickly through elite circles. Rumors exploded. Some claimed Damien was romantically involved with Clara. Others accused Clara of manipulating him for status. The pressure intensified daily. And eventually, it reached Clara directly. One evening after work, she discovered paparazzi outside her apartment building. Flashbulbs exploded instantly. Clara. Are you dating Damien Whitmore? Did you target him intentionally? Are you trying to reclaim your family status? The questions hit like knives. She pushed through the crowd silently and locked herself inside her apartment shaking. Moments later, her phone rang. Damien. I'm sending security, he said immediately. No. Clara. I said no. Her voice cracked slightly. Silence followed. Then quietly, she whispered. I can't live through public humiliation again. The vulnerability in her voice shattered something inside him. That night, Damien drove to her apartment personally. When Clara opened the door, her eyes were red from crying. He'd never seen her look this fragile before. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Damien said softly. You once told me pain makes people choose between cruelty and compassion. Clara nodded slightly. I'm trying very hard not to become cruel again. Those words revealed how close she stood to emotional collapse. Damien stepped inside quietly. I spent years thinking strength meant never needing anyone, he admitted. Clara looked at him carefully. But you? He exhaled slowly. You make me want to become a better man. The honesty of that confession stunned both of them. Because for the first time, Damien Whitmore wasn't speaking like a billionaire. Or a CEO. Just a human being finally lowering his walls. But before the moment could settle, another obstacle arrived. The next morning, a devastating article appeared online. A former executive connected to the Bennett scandal publicly accused Clara's late father of fraud again, claiming the family deserved their downfall. The story exploded everywhere instantly. Comment sections turned vicious. People attacked Clara relentlessly online. And worst of all, someone spray-painted "Thief's Daughter" across the wall outside her apartment building. When Damien saw it, fury consumed him. But Clara simply stood frozen, staring at the words silently. Not crying. Not speaking. Just tired. So deeply tired. Damien walked toward the wall slowly. Then, without hesitation, he picked up a bucket of paint from a maintenance worker nearby. "What are you doing?" Clara asked softly. He looked at her calmly. "Fixing something." And there, in front of reporters and strangers and cameras, one of the richest men in the city painted over those cruel words himself. Not for publicity. Not for image. But because someone kind once taught him that dignity matters. Clara watched silently as white paint slowly covered the hatred. Then unexpectedly, tears rolled down her cheeks. Because after years of losing everything, someone was finally choosing to stand beside her instead of walking away. And for the first time in a very long time, Clara Bennett no longer felt alone. The photograph spread across the internet within hours. Damien Whitmore, billionaire CEO, known for emotional distance and ruthless business decisions, standing in a simple white shirt with paint stains on his hands, covering hateful graffiti outside Clara Bennett's apartment building. No security team. No publicist. No speech. Just quiet loyalty. And somehow, that image affected people more deeply than any expensive charity campaign ever had. For the first time, many began seeing Damien differently. Not as an untouchable billionaire, but as a man changing. Meanwhile, Clara stood inside her apartment staring at the viral headlines appearing everywhere. Billionaire defends former maid against public humiliation. Whitmore stands by Clara Bennett. Why is Damien Whitmore risking his reputation? But none of the articles understood the truth. This was never about reputation anymore. It was about humanity. For days afterward, Damien refused interview requests and ignored criticism from investors. Several board members warned him privately. "You're becoming emotionally compromised." One executive even threatened resignation. Public association with the Bennett scandal could damage shareholder confidence. Damien listened silently before replying calmly. "If compassion threatens this company's values, then maybe our values were broken to begin with." The room fell completely silent. Because nobody had ever heard Damien Whitmore speak like that before. But while Damien battled pressure publicly, Clara fought a quieter war internally. Fear. Old fear. The kind that returns when painful memories reopen. One rainy evening, she visited the cemetery where her parents were buried. She stood silently beneath a black umbrella staring at their gravestones while thunder echoed in the distance. "I tried to stay invisible," she whispered softly. Rain rolled down her cheeks like tears. "I thought disappearing would protect me." For a moment, grief overwhelmed her completely. Not just grief for losing wealth. Grief for losing safety. Trust. Home. Then suddenly, another umbrella appeared beside her. "Damien. You followed me?" she asked quietly. "I was worried." She looked back toward the gravestones. "My father wasn't a criminal." "I know. But people only remember headlines." Damien stepped closer carefully. "I spent years believing money made people important," he admitted softly. "Then I met someone with almost nothing, who treated people better than everyone I knew." Clara looked down silently. "You changed me." The simplicity of his voice made emotion rise inside her chest. Because after years of feeling forgotten, dismissed, and judged, someone truly saw her. Not the scandal. Not the gossip. Her. And for the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to lean against someone without fear of falling apart. Weeks passed. Then something unexpected happened. An investigative journalist reopened the original Bennett financial scandal after inconsistencies surfaced online. Documents emerged. Hidden records. Internal communications. And slowly, the truth finally came out. Clara's father had not destroyed the company intentionally. He had been framed by corrupt business partners attempting to cover massive illegal transactions. The scandal that ruined the Bennett family was built on lies. News channels exploded with coverage. Former executives faced investigations. Public opinion shifted overnight. And suddenly, the same elite society that abandoned Clara years earlier began inviting her back into their world again. Exclusive dinners. Interviews. Charity galas. Magazine covers. But Clara surprised everyone. She declined nearly all of them. Because losing everything once had taught her something powerful. Not all doors deserve reopening. Instead, she focused on something else entirely. Helping others. One afternoon, Damien arrived at an old abandoned building downtown Clara recently purchased quietly with legal compensation money recovered from the case. Construction crews moved in and out carrying supplies. "What is this place?" he asked. Clara smiled softly. A second chance. Inside, the building buzzed with renovation work. Large open rooms. Classrooms. Counseling offices. A community kitchen. Damien slowly realized what she was creating. A shelter? Partly. Clara walked through the unfinished hallway. There are thousands of women who lose everything overnight. Single mothers. Families escaping abuse. People destroyed by circumstances nobody sees. She paused gently. "I know what it feels like when the world decides your suffering is inconvenient." Damien watched her carefully. "And this place? Will remind them they still matter." Emotion tightened in his chest instantly. Because somehow, Clara transformed her own pain into refuge for others. Again. Always again. Weeks later, the center officially opened. Hundreds gathered outside for the ceremony. Volunteers. Families. Former employees from Whitmore Manor. Even Mrs. Alvarez arrived wearing her best coat and crying proudly before cameras. A sign above the entrance read, "The Bennett House, a place to begin again." Inside the lobby hung one simple quote beneath framed artwork. "Pain can turn people cruel, or compassionate. You decide which one." The same words that once changed Clara's life. During the opening event, reporters surrounded Damien. Did Clara Bennett inspire this project? He looked across the room toward Clara helping a nervous little girl carry donated books into the children's library. Then he answered honestly. "She reminded me that success without kindness is just another form of poverty." The quote spread everywhere online afterward. But the most emotional moment came later that evening. After the crowds disappeared. After reporters left. After the lights dimmed softly across the new center. Clara stood alone inside the children's reading room arranging books carefully on shelves. Damien entered quietly carrying 2 cups of tea. "You missed dinner," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "I got distracted." He handed her a cup. Then glanced around the room. Colorful murals covered the walls now. Soft lamps glowed warmly beside tiny chairs and reading corners. Children's laughter still echoed faintly from earlier. "It's beautiful," Damien said. Clara looked emotional suddenly. "For years I thought losing everything destroyed my life." He stayed silent. "But maybe," she whispered, "maybe it taught me who I wanted to become." Damien stepped closer slowly. You know what's strange? What? You spent years believing you lost your place in the world. Clara looked at him quietly. But I think you were actually finding it. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Not broken tears. Healing tears. The kind that arrive when someone finally understands your soul completely. Then softly, almost nervously for the first time in years, Damien reached for her hand. And Clara let him. No fear. No hesitation. Because trust had slowly grown between them through every difficult moment. And now, standing inside a building created from compassion and survival, both of them understood something life-changing. The greatest transformations don't happen when people gain wealth. They happen when people rediscover humanity. But the story didn't end there. 3 months later, during the annual Whitmore Winter Gala, the ballroom filled once again with powerful people dressed in luxury and diamonds. Only this time, something was different. At the center of the event stood Clara. Not as a maid. Not as an object of mockery. But as guest of honor. The gala itself had been transformed into a fundraising event supporting shelters, housing programs, and education initiatives across the city. And beside the entrance stood a long table filled with handwritten letters from families helped through the Bennett house. One letter in particular caught Clara's attention. It came from a young single mother named Elise. Because someone believed in me when I had nothing, the letter read, "My daughter sleeps in a warm bed tonight." Clara pressed the letter gently against her chest. Emotion overwhelmed her. Because suddenly she realized the full circle of everything. Years ago, society watched her lose everything and turned away. Now she had become the person turning toward others instead. Across the ballroom, Damien watched her quietly. Then smiled. Not the cold, polished smile magazines photographed for business covers. A real one. Warm. Peaceful. Human. And in that moment, everyone around them finally understood something extraordinary. The maid invited to a gala as a joke had become the woman who transformed an entire city through kindness. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments below.